Hey, 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 it's Mr. A here with another episode of Journal Time. All right, guys, here's what you need on tap for today. You need this map of the ancient civilizations. You need this paper that we're going to talk about the 8 characteristics of the ancient civilizations, as well as your journal, a whole bunch of coloring supplies, your scissors, a glue stick, and a pencil. Please make sure you have all of those things. Ready, set, go. All right, next we need to take these 2 pieces of paper, trim around the outside edges, both around the rectangular frames of these papers, and find 2 blank pages back to back in our journals and glue them side by side like this. Now that we have these 2 pages cut out, please go ahead and glue them into the next 2 pages. Putting the ones with the characteristics on the left-hand side, make sure that you put a title at the top, What Makes a Civilization? Then, once you've got that one glued in, make sure that you glue in the map and put a title at the top calling it Ancient Civilizations Map. So please make sure that your next 2 pages look just like this. Next, you can go ahead and put your scissors and your glue away because now we're going to start to talk about these characteristics of a civilization. And the whole reason that we're doing this is because we're going to be talking about 4 different civilizations over these next few weeks and months. And each of these civilizations have many similarities, although they also have vast differences. These 8 characteristics are going to keep these civilizations all aligned within one major category of ancient civilizations, and then each of them will have their own specific details and interests that make them all a little bit different. So grab your pencil, make sure you have some coloring supplies with you, and let's start. So the first one, large areas that featured a government, important buildings, and laws. Cities. So cities are one of the first major characteristics of a civilization. Any great country or even continent has to first have its own cities. So these are large areas that usually feature a government, important buildings, and laws. So in Ohio, we can think of all kinds of cities, right? Columbus and Cleveland and Delaware and Marysville. We as Ohioans are a civilization. Even the United States has cities within it that aren't in Ohio, making it a civilization, and so on and so forth. So I drew an example of an old temple and some teepees as we're going to see with these civilizations. You either match my pictures or draw whatever you'd like, as long as it represents cities. The next one, a group of people responsible for enforcing the laws and keeping control in a certain area. This one would be government. So government is a group of people responsible for enforcing the laws and keeping control in a certain area. Now, for me, obviously, we would love the government to be a democracy and voting and having everyone to have a say. But if we're being honest, back then, there wasn't a lot of democracy happening. Many governments were formed through monarchies, some dictatorships, and others even theocracies. But for the vast majority of these ancient civilizations, there was some sort of priest or king that was in charge of the entire civilization making its laws. Sometimes it was through a bloodline, other times it was through overtaking of power, similar to a dictatorship. So cities and government. So far, in Ohio and in the United States, we have both of those things. The next one, the worship of a god or many gods based on a group of people's beliefs. You guessed it, religion. In order to be a civilization, you have to have some sort of a religion, some sort of ideology that many people follow behind. Me personally, as Mr. A, I relate to Christianity, and that is what I believe. But this definition clearly says it's the worship of a god or many gods based on a group of people's beliefs. So in order to be a civilization, it has to be a widely accepted and popular religion of choice. And we're going to find that these civilizations, this was one of their most important characteristics and what made them a little bit crazy. The next one, the ability to focus on a specific job to make money or contribute to society. This one might seem a little more obvious, but maybe you might not think of these words. Job specialization. The ability to focus on a specific job to make money is all about specializing, which we talked about during economics. To specialize means to really focus in on one area, and we as Americans have lots of job specialization. There's many paths, which is why my picture represents a choice of paths before us. So we could choose to go to college, we could choose to join the workforce, we could choose to join the military, and lots of choices in between. But what makes a civilization is that people specialize in a variety of different goods and services, allowing them to be successful and produce lots of materials. The next one, a structure that ranks people based on their value or importance to a particular society. Social classes. Social classes are an idea or a structure that really ranks people based upon their value or importance. So for example, I drew a picture of stair steps. And you'll notice that there's a low, a middle, an upper, and an elite with an amount of dollar signs above each of them. This represents that you and I and your parents and people all around the United States fall into one of these categories based upon the amount of money that they make. Now, whether fair or not fair, that's a whole other discussion. But social classes is the idea that some people are on top, some people are on bottom, and some people are in the middle. And we're going to find that all four of the civilizations that we'll study really had a varying difference in social classes, whereas we in the United States pretty much have those four levels of social classes. The next one, buildings and creations that show different aspects of a group's culture. This characteristic is all about arts and architecture. Architecture is a big fancy word for buildings, bridges, or anything that can take some engineering aspects and add some beauty to it. So if you've ever been to Dublin, Ohio, and you have seen the Needle Point Bridge, that is a piece of art and architecture. It shows the civilization's culture, and what makes them a characteristic is because it takes this work of art and it provides use to it. So we're going to find many of these civilizations that we'll study had beautiful pieces of art and architecture, just like we do today. The next one, projects carried out by the government to help people in that community. For example, roads, sewage, waterways, etc. Public works. So public works is essentially serving the needs of the public and working either through volunteering, like picking up trash or doing a community event, or public works can be like people who work for the state. So ODOT, people who plow our roads and salt our roadways during snow time, or like I drew a picture of, fixing our roadways. If there's potholes or cracks, that's a public work, or even making a park or providing outdoor restrooms. Those are all public works that allow the public to do things typically for free. All right, the last one, a system of symbols or drawings used to record things such as taxes or crops. And our last one is writing. Writing is all about a system of symbols or drawings used to record things such as taxes or crops. We'll note that each of our ancient civilizations did have their own form of writing and keeping records, though they look very different from what we know of as writing today. So I can't wait for you to find out. All right, please make sure that you have all of these written in and that you have your own pictures. Remember, your pictures don't have to match mine, but I do ask that they have color. Next, we're going to move on to our map, and we're going to need blue, yellow, and green. So make sure that you find all of those three colors plus a red, and we're going to note the differences in these civilizations. So we're going to talk about first all of our major important landmarks. So here we note that we have North America. Ohio is right around here below the Great Lakes. We have what's called Central America right here. And then we have South America. So again, North, Central, and South. On this side of both continents, we have the Atlantic Ocean. On this side over here, we have the Pacific Ocean. And an important body of water that's a bit smaller is the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Mississippi River. So we're going to take a second to make our map look a little like this. All right, so what I would like you to do is to take a second to write down these important landmarks and bodies of water. Notice with my coloring, since it's such a large amount of white space, just do a quick scribble shape. Don't take too long. So go ahead and take a moment and make your map match mine. All right, next, let's start to move into these ancient civilizations. We're going to find our red first. Please make sure that you underlined our key, all of these colors, just so they stand out a little bit more. The Mississippians will probably be the easiest one to note geographically because they are the civilization that was founded in North America. So for the Mississippians, we have this area right here that is outlined with the Mississippi River. So if you will take your red and shade in this outlined area that Mr. A put for you in the map, map, the Mississippians lived all along the Mississippi River. Now, these were a great people with many separate tribes, some of them known as the Iroquois or the Wampanoag, lots of different names of Indian tribes that I'm sure you've heard of before. Notice, though, Ohio is right over here in this area. So many of the Native American tribes that lived in Ohio are not ones that we're going to talk about for this ancient civilization. Next, if you'll go ahead and grab your green. Green represents the Incas, and if you've ever heard of Machu Picchu, that is one of the most famous mountain range civilizations that has ever been around. And no, Machu Picchu is not a Pokemon, although it does sound like a Pokemon, but it's not. So Machu Picchu is an area up in the Andes Mountains. You'll notice all of these little triangles here because this is where the Incas lived. The Incas, as you can see, had the largest territory. So the Incas started all the way from the top of South America, almost all the way to the bottom of South America. So if you'll take your green and color all of those in green, this is where the Incas lived. So far, we have the Mississippians in North America, we have the Incas in South America, and our last two civilizations are the Mayans and the Aztecs. Let's start with the Mayans first. The Mayans actually came before the Aztecs, and the Mayans lived on what's known as the Yucatan Peninsula. Can you say that quietly? Yucatan Peninsula. That's a hard one to say. So a peninsula is a body of water that is a body of land that is surrounded by water on three sides. So the Mayans lived right here in what's known as the Yucatan Peninsula. This is a common travel place for people to vacation or take cruise ships. You can actually see some of the Mayan temples still today. Then the Aztecs lived right after the Mayans, a couple hundred years after, and they lived and settled just north of where the Mayans settled. And we'll find that a lot of their geography and architecture was inspired from the Mayans, though they were very different. And the Aztecs lived in what's now commonly known as Mexico City, which is the capital of Mexico. So Mexico is the country right here in Central America, ending right at this tip. Two of our civilizations lived in what is now modern-day Mexico. One of them lived in the United States area, and one of them lived in South America. So please make sure that both of your pages have lots of nice color, that you finish up, and that you come and find me to show me your completed journal. Great work, everyone.